So one of my favorite horror games of all time, Dead Space, is being remade by Motive Studios and released by Electronic Arts. That's right, a full-fledged remake of the original title is now in development, confirmed by Electronic Arts. Players first jumped aboard the USG Ishimura in 2008, assuming the role of Isaac Clarke as he ventures through the Necromorph-infested ship. 3 mainline games, 2 spin-offs, 2 animated movies, comics, a bunch of fan art and backlore, and the series has been laying dormant for almost a decade. In this video, we're going to cover absolutely everything there is to know about the Dead Space remake, when it's going to be coming out, what platforms, what we know about the actual core changes to the gameplay and the story. Unfortunately, they're doing a little bit of tweaking to the original story, and then also what we as the gaming community would like to see from Dead Space. So first of all, when is this game coming out? No idea. It looks like most likely the tail end of 2022, however it could get pushed into Q1 of 2023. Second, what platforms is it going to be on? No idea, but most likely PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and PC. I savagely doubt it's going to be on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, especially because that would include the base Xbox One, not the One S or X, and the PS4 Slim, so not the Pro, which, to not be too blunt about it, are savagely underpowered for modern games, especially like this ambitious remake. The next huge rumor or question in the gaming community is Dead Space remake leading up to Dead Space 4 or a new Dead Space game. Well, no, not as of now. EA has blatantly said they're not working on any Dead Space titles other than this. However, if this game sells phenomenally well, they'd be kind of dumb to not bank on that success and create Dead Space 4. So what do we know about this game thus far? Isaac Clarke is going to talk. Yes, the man has a voice. In the original Dead Space, engineer Isaac Clarke was a silent protagonist, much like Grand Theft Auto 3. But in the sequels, Dead Space 2 and 3, he was voiced by actor Gunnar Wright. And guess what? Gunnar is making a return, as EA has confirmed that he is going to be doing the voice of Isaac Clarke for the remake. Next up, the dismemberment mechanics have actually gotten more intricate. So in case you guys haven't played Dead Space 1 through 3, dismembering the limbs of your enemies, these necromorph demons infesting the ship, is basically how you defeat them. But it's gotten a lot more intricate, in-depth, and gory. Simulated limb-severing technology has advanced substantially since 2008. The livestream featured some early renderings of the game's necromorphs, and they seem to be affected by weapons in a more detailed, convincing, and disgusting way. The new dismemberment system includes limbs whose flesh gets stripped off as you shoot them, helping you to gauge how much damage is done. How many layers of flesh have I peeled back on this necromorph? And then you can get kind of an idea. How much bone do I have to chip through? It's got weak points that feel more organic than the game's original big glowing joints. Yeah, that wasn't very scary, and that takes you out of the immersion that it highlights the enemy's limbs. Now, you're gonna have to gauge it by how much flesh has been peeled. And also, there is more variety to how each given weapon affects each given necromorph. That is awesome, and that was a big complaint from the original game, as well as some games that I've played here recently. For example, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, which I raved about and said it was a phenomenal game. You can literally use every single weapon effectively against every single enemy type, which doesn't really force you to try out any new weapons or to engage enemies differently with different equipment. So the fact that different weapons, for example, a fully automatic 9-inch nail gun and an automatic bandsaw launcher, form differently when it comes to dismembering these necromorph assholes. EA's livestream confirmed one substantial change. The Dead Space remake will now let you float in zero gravity, like you could in Dead Space 2 and 3, as opposed to having to leap from surface to surface with your gravity boots that would anchor you to the walls. So I'll be the first one to say it, I wasn't a huge fan of that. It felt kind of clunky, and granted, back in 2008, we didn't know any better because all games felt kind of clunky. Nothing had very smooth, fluid movement. With modern games where movement is incredibly important, you know, it's almost a staple or a standard now that every game has a sprint and a slide and a jump, maybe even a double jump. But now, instead of having to jump from surface to surface and latch on with gravity boots, now you can actually free float in zero gravity spaces. Next up, it is double confirmed, once from EA and then once from Motive, there are 0 microtransactions in this game, so no purchasable skins from an online store or anything, which is good because EA has been in more than hot water boiling water, i.e. class action lawsuits, over some of its gambling practices focusing on the younger demographic. So no microtransactions here. A lore infusion is coming. You know, you might have heard the term winter is coming. No. A lore infusion is coming. What does that mean? Well, they're modifying the story. And this is where a lot of fans, including myself, were initially quite worried, concerned about where Motive and EA were going to take the story of Dead Space, considering of all the things that could use a revamp or a remake, a remaster, the story isn't really one of them. However, Motive and EA cleared this up by saying that they previously hinted around that they would build out on Dead Space's story. And what they mean is just this. We are not going to change the foundation of the story because that story is super iconic, said creative director Roman Campos Arriola. The things we want to enrich in terms of story or narrative is really about the bigger universe of Dead Space. We want to have more ties with what comes after, whether it's from the books, the anime, Dead Space 2, we want to put the original in a better way inside the broader universe. So that makes sense. They're actually building out a lot of side lore and back lore, side stories that make more sense as far as the grand universe of Dead Space. So not really changing the core story of Isaac trying to find his girl Nicole. Dead Space has become an extremely lore-heavy series across 3 main games and a host of tie-in media, and the Dead Space remake sounds like it will spend more time acknowledging that lore than trying to change it. So that is awesome. That helps to alleviate a lot of the concerns that myself and a lot of the fans of the Dead Space series had, that again, they're building onto the story, not really changing the core story. So that's great. And tying along with that, the game aims to flesh out its side characters. See what I did with the word flesh because it's a game about dismemberment? The Dead Space remake also aims to provide more depth to the characters around Isaac, including Nicole Brennan, the girlfriend that he spends the entire game looking for. As Campos Oriola puts it, we want to give you the means to actually look for her, and more than look for her, learn what happened to her during the outbreak. That might imply that Dead Space's remake will involve a little more active player agency than the highly linear original. Or maybe it's just acknowledging that the original storyline does seem to periodically forget Nicole exists. Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. Next up, what we as the gaming community want to see from the Dead Space remake. This is based on an article from Game Informer. That, as long as 2 other articles, will be sourced or cited down there in the description below. And the first one would be to keep that horror aspect, that sheer piss your pants and take a dump in your shorts fear that was stricken into your nipples whenever you played this game. Horror is the most essential aspect of Dead Space's identity. The original Dead Space nailed the isolating atmosphere of films like Alien and Event Horizon. Whether you're dodging the writhing tentacles of a baby necromorph, stopping to listen to the creaks of a massive derelict spaceship, or running through an engine room in panic as alarms drown out the sound of approaching enemies, the original Dead Space played our hearts like a frickin' fiddle. You probably can't repeat all those tricks and expect the same results, but we'd love to see you try, Motive. So besides just jump scares, this game was very, very eerie because again, you're in the cold recesses of space, you hear the creaks of a metal ship as you walk through it, this kind of industrial environment. You yourself are using weapons that are actually mining tools, and there were some very intense moments where again, the ship is screaming at you, sirens are ablazing, so you can't hear the massive, wet, meaty footsteps of a half-decayed necromorph ready to slice you with his razor titties. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Motive actually keeps that initial intensity, considering all of the jump scares are kind of known already, so maybe they'll reposition where enemies pop out of to give you a new experience, because if you've played through the original Dead Space, you're already going to be like, well, there's going to be an enemy that's going to drop from the ceiling right here. You know what I mean? It'll be interesting to see how they mix things up to keep us on our toes. Next up, we would like to see a slightly modified combat system, but not reworking the whole mechanics. The original Dead Space is easily the scariest game in the series. Sadly, it's also the weakest mechanically. Dead Space 2 was still a solid horror game, but its biggest contribution to the franchise was elevating the action. Isaac's movements became more fluid, his telekinesis abilities were more responsive, the refined gunplay made tearing through waves of enemies incredibly satisfying. These are all no-brainer improvements, and we might as well have them for a remake. Sure, it's a little easier to scare players when they're also fighting with the controls, but that's not worth the frustration. And last but not least, it's perfectly acceptable for Motive and Electronic Arts to change the core gameplay just slightly with subtle tweaks to make it smoother, as again, This isn't 2008. This game's going to be coming out in 2022 or 23. So obviously some of the niceties that we've come to be accustomed to with character movement, as well as, well, user interfaces, HUDs, etc., should be implemented in the game. However, the core story should remain the same, and that original fear or horror that you had not wanting to turn a corner. I remember specifically being like, I'll just play this tomorrow. It's okay. I'll wait till the sun comes out tomorrow to play, because I didn't want to walk around a corner because I knew something was out there. I could smell it. It's a damn good game, and I'm really looking forward to this remake. I will be streaming it for sure. Why? Not to entertain you guys, not for your guys' benefit, but for me, so I can get through it. Because if I'm not alone, I got internet friends with me, I'll feel a little bit more safe. That and the new dismemberment system might make me feel a little bit more OP as well. If this video was beneficial for you and helped you to understand the new Dead Space remake, what it is and what it is not a remaster, it is a remake, full-blown remake from the core up. Liking this video will help it to get seen by other gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and honest product reviews of gaming peripherals. See you in the next one, which will be tomorrow, so I upload daily.